steadfast to create a community that cares for itself. Before we jump to tonight's presentations and I introduce our speakers, I just want to say a few words about disasters. I mean, many of us have experienced a disaster in our lifetime. It can be a man-made disaster, such as 9/11, which I personally experienced, or it can be a natural disaster or natural disasters as they're becoming more and more frequent, like a fire. And we'll hear from a survivor of fire this evening on our panel. Floods, hurricanes, tornadoes. You'll hear a little bit from our panelists about the various disasters that they've experienced. And if we have time, I'll mention a few things about 9/11, which was the really only man-made disaster that our group has experienced. But disasters impact people in many, many ways. You know, it's in addition to destroying homes and infrastructure, after a disaster, it's common to experience a range of emotions such as stress, shock, disbelief, anxiety, fear. It can happen again, or what's going to happen next, and helplessness. Sometimes we feel, you know, what can we do? And it can be very, very overwhelming. I mean, these kinds of feelings are very distressing. They can impact people of all ages. They can impact families, and they can impact entire communities. But they're a natural part of responding to a disaster. And I do want to emphasize that the kinds of emotions and stories that you're going to hear are very, very natural emotions to experience after a disaster. And at times, while they may seem insurmountable, and you'll hear that a bit from our Hurricane Ian survivor, and they take a while, these feelings take a while to resolve and can come back over periods of time, there's still, what you're going to hear tonight really are stories of hope. There's stories from our survivors. There's stories about emotional support. There's stories about healing, and there's stories about how we rebuild communities after a disaster. All of the people that you're going to hear from tonight, both survivors and professionals who have helped survivors get through disasters, really are stories where everybody who'll talk to you saw light at the end of the tunnel. While sometimes at the very beginning, it's hard to see, you'll hear those stories tonight. So we hope you take the seriousness of these stories and the serious impact they've had on people's lives, but know that there is light at the end of the tunnel, and there's hope for anybody. And as we keep experiencing hurricanes, and for just a little while ago, Debbie, and now we're getting ready for another one just this week. You know, just keep the messages of hope and healing in mind. So as we go right to our speakers, our first speaker this evening is Vicki Jean Bean, who's a Hurricane Ian survivor. Vicki lives in South Venice, where just about 2 years ago, right around this time, Hurricane Ian, a Category 4 storm, brought 18 inches of rain to that area of South County, here in Sarasota, South County, and further south. Its hurricane force winds ripped off trees, ripped off roofs of houses and mobile homes. They downed power lines throughout the community, forcing many people, including Vicki, to evacuate. Today, Vicki's going to tell her story about how she had to flee her home because of the impact of Hurricane Ian, and how she and her family have rebuilt and are recovering, and actually are still going through the healing process. Our second speaker, and I'm just going to introduce everybody at the same time, our second speaker is Hilda Dutton. Hilda has been very active in the field of social services for 20 years and currently is the Director of Disaster Recovery and Resiliency at the United Way of South Sarasota County. She's committed to assisting Sarasota County hurricane survivors to recover and repair their homes damaged by Hurricane Ian, Idalia, and most recently Debbie, and hopefully not any more from this week. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Hilda works closely with the Sarasota County Long-Term Recovery Group to locate the most appropriate and useful resources to help them secure the funding that they need. And you'll hear more about that in detail as we go on this evening. Other useful resources and tools for disaster recovery and crisis relief for survivors. Hilda works with a number of case managers in the Sarasota area who do very similar work. Our third presenter is Julissa Perez. Julissa is an attorney, hi, with expertise in insurance claims, disaster recovery, and resilience. We all hear a lot about insurance claims after disaster, and Julissa is an expert and is going to share some tips with people. She currently serves as the local liaison for United Policyholders, Hurricane Ian Roadmap to Recovery program specifically. And this program is a program of United Policyholders, which is a nonprofit, by the way. It's just want to make sure you understand that. It's not an insurance company, but United Policyholders assists hurricane impacted households in navigating the recovery and the very complicated and daunting insurance claim process. They help people overcome the obstacles that they encounter, resolving disputes, and helping them complete the repairs they need to be able to get back and live in their homes. And our last presenter is Annie Barbour. Annie is a 2017 California Tubbs fire survivor and board member of the recovery group called Coffey Strong. Coffey Strong was formed by Annie and her neighbors to help bring their community back. Her community, a neighborhood in California, lost 1,440 homes as a result of the Tubbs fires, and a total of 5,600 in that area as a result of the fires. As she went through the process and as she absorbed what it meant to her and its impact on her life, she wanted to help others in the recovery efforts, which led her to volunteer for United Policyholders group. Then she went to work for them, as she currently works for them, and she's going to be here to share her story and what she's learned and how she's grown from the disaster that she faced. So without further ado, why don't we start? And we're going to start with Vicki Jean Bean. So Vicki.
Hi there, thank you. Good evening, and thanks for having me on today. Thanks for letting me join in. And I live in Venice, Florida, and I've been there about 10 years. Originally was in Orlando for 30 years, and obviously from the UK. You can tell by my accent. But I lived in my home with my son, he's a teenage son, and we basically lived in our house, obviously prior to the hurricane, and Ian hit us on September 28th, 2022. So that's actually 2 years ago this Saturday. So it's crazy how long it seemed that this has taken, but also how quickly it's come around. We're 2 years already. We actually moved back in our house in May of this year, and it's great. Kind of just moved in, got new furniture, and gradually got new things along the way, and it's nice to have home back again. When we arrived, basically, at the house, there was quite a lot of damage. We had flood water that had come into the house, trees down, power lines down. The shed had been taken down by one of the trees where everything was stored in to protect it from the hurricane. Fence, everything, you name it. There was power lines in the road. It was quite catastrophic, actually, when we came along. But I'm here to share my story today with you anyway and offer any help or coping skills and strategies that I can, you know, along the way. So anyhow, so basically the lead up to it, we were up in Oregon. My now husband Alex and I, with his family, we were up in Oregon, and we knew there was kind of a storm on the horizon. Didn't really know if it was coming our way, what it was doing. It kept changing its mind. And we were looking on the TV and getting caught up in the anguish that you do by seeing constantly different changes in the spaghetti models and, you know, the hype. There's a lot of hype that comes along with it, and it can make anybody anxious, actually, regardless, you know, but if you sit and watch the news all day. So I don't recommend doing that, but I do recommend being alert and keeping an eye on things. So we did make a decision. You know, I've been here a long time, like I said, 32 years. I thought this one just seemed a little bit different. So we made a decision to fly back early. So we came down, packed up the house, took a few valuables with us, put a few things up off the floor just in case that we may have got a little bit of water or something like that. And took the cat and dog in the car, literally. We had the car packed up and they were right on top. And we headed over to Orlando, and we stayed with my stepmom in Orlando, and we rode out the storm there. We did get not a direct hit, but we got enough to, like I said before, cause plenty of damage. It was about 5 to 7 days in, and we were able to head back over to the house. The roads were closed, and they'd advised not going on the roads because of power lines and things like that. So when I arrived at the house, I actually met the insurance agent there. And we went on in. We were the first two to go on inside the house. My son was at his brother's in you know, a little bit south from us in Northport. And so it was me and the insurance guy. We went in, and he was walking around. He was very quiet, didn't say much. And I was just kind of looking at the devastation. You know, it was dark. It seemed dark because all the blinds were closed. It just had a dark feel about it. There was no electric. Electric was out a good week, 10 days. And I have to admit, it's quite daunting. You know, you go in and you're in puddles. And I was looking around, and everything, my rugs and couch had soaked up all the water, and, you know, furniture had destroyed itself quite quickly. You could already see little specks of mold just in those few days that had already started to take over. So it was pretty difficult, I have to say, you know, to see that first of all. And then so when the insurance guy came, he said he'd be in touch. He got up on the roof. Everything was intact on the roof. All the windows were intact. And so off he went. At that point, I was like, okay, now what do I do? So just kind of opened up all the doors, started pulling out some furniture onto the front lawn, started sweeping water out and things like that. And then I reached out to a few neighbors. I had a neighbor around the corner that came and helped. I had my neighbors next door. I was actually the only house that flooded in the neighborhood because I had huge trees in the yard, and the trees had all come down, and they'd all accumulated, the leaves had all shaken off, and they'd all accumulate into the ditches. So this obviously backed everything up, and then allowed the water to create a pool, basically, like a swimming pool. So because of that, like I said, the neighbors were very, very helpful. It was wonderful. You know, they were very, very supportive. Um, Sorry. So anyway, the neighbors came, like I said, and they helped me take things out. I hired someone to cut the drywall. I acted quite quickly, really. He also had a generator, so we were able to get some dehumidifiers from Lowe's and get those going, and kind of started piling everything up on the streets. It was quite the pile. It went around the corner, and it was pretty much everything, really, to be honest with you. And so, you know, we started the cleanup process. And you know, you do get your emotions go wild, really, because it's quite overwhelming. It's not really even your things, but it's just the overwhelming. It's very overwhelming when it first happens, and that's expected. You know, you should embrace your emotions. But anyway, so we went through that, and like I said, there was just a lot of damage, and you know, we were trying to get things sorted out. It's very important, really, to validate your emotion. I just want to kind of point that out. You know, people think that they shouldn't feel a certain way, and you really should. You need to embrace it. You know, you're going to feel loss and grief and fear and stress and anger as well at the same time. You know, you really are. That's you know, the main thing you're going to feel. Then you know, gradually and surely I got in kind of a routine. I know it sounds weird, but you do. You have to kind of put yourself in a little bit of routine and have self-care. And I'd go over to the house and stay at a friend's or stay with a neighbor and go and start clearing out and gradually doing more things as I went along, and to get kind of the house cleared out really and get going that way. Then I reached out, well, I should say actually right in the beginning, I reached out to FEMA, and I'd have to say anyone that's watching this that I would highly recommend that you do that straight away. The insurance was very, very quick to tell me that I wasn't covered um, because it was a flood, and it wasn't, it was wind-driven rain basically, and it was not caused from the roof or windows. So they did cover the shed that the tree fell on. They wouldn't cover the fence because the fence wasn't attached to the house. It only went around the outside and didn't attach. And a lot of different loopholes that you don't really think about when you're going through things. So it's kind of good if you're, you know, if you've been through something or you're anticipating something, to kind of check all that out first and ahead of time. That way you're a little bit more prepared, you know, that does help. FEMA were great. They gave me a case number straight away. And they got very busy very quickly. You know, I would be on the phone certain times. I think I was on hold for 17 and a half hours once. And I literally just had my phone on hold and had music playing and made sure I didn't miss that when they picked up the phone. You know, the main thing really as well is to have community and support. And you can get that from friends and neighbors and, you know, carers and other reach outs. Really, I would definitely say to reach out to other people. At the time I did also reach out to Unite Florida. That was a DeSantis program that came about. It was their first year, so they were a little bit, they were very good, they were very, very kind, the caseworkers and such. And I had to meet up with them. You had to get a lot of preparation of paperwork, so that's something else I would suggest is, you know, to get your paperwork in order. You know, they want to know all the FEMA, any payments that came to you throughout the time, and have all that ready. And I went along and met with a young lady, and she was going to set up time for maybe someone to come out and take a look at the house and see if they could help in any way. Also, United Way, Hilda and John, they came and showed up at my doorstep a few months later, actually. But I'd reached out earlier in the year, and they came a few months later and said, is there any way we can help as well? I had a group of people called 8 Days of Hope, which were incredible. They were a church group that were in the neighborhood. They came by and said, do you need help? And they helped me actually take trees down. And when they came into the property, they first walked in and they took a look and said, you know, we need to help you try and bring these walls up a little higher, because I'd taken out, you know, about 2 feet. And they said, we're going to go ahead and bring them up 4 feet. And that way, when you come to the time to repair, it'll be an easier repair for you. And in doing so, they took out the wall and then noticed behind the cabinets in the kitchen and the bathroom that there was mold. We had quite thick mold at that time. So that actually, at that point, we then had to take out the kitchen, take out the bathroom, basically bring everything down to the studs. So that was quite a challenge as well, and a lot of work, obviously, but they did help. It was very, very kind. With Unite Florida, I had lots of meetings, and they came out, and you know, time was telling. We were supposed to meet with a contractor, and then contractor couldn't turn up, so I'd go and stay with another friend, or we got an Airbnb, or I went up to Oregon, I went to Orlando. I went kind of all over the place really, because I wasn't sure of the timeline. You know, you do have to have patience because recovery takes a long time. It really does. So I wasn't sure of the timeline, so I was kind of staying everywhere. I got a pod and put furniture in it. Then I moved it out and put it indoors. And then I got another pod and put furniture in it, and back and forth. And the seasons were changing. It was too warm to keep things outside, so I put them inside. And then eventually, you know, and time would tell that the Unite Florida came out and they helped, and they took a look and said that we needed electrical done. So at that point, the ceiling was taken down and the electrical had to be done that way. So we were really down. to the studs. Then United Way came in and did a huge recovery program with us. It was incredible. They came and they went through every step. You know, we had a group of people that came from different parts of the country. They stayed in the church. They spent their 3 weeks in the church, and they came along to the house and they helped with all the different aspects of putting the house back together. We went
Which
right from
actually, I'm going to just, because we
no,
have to move on, Sue, Vicki, but it's a perfect segue. I mean,
no.
your story is just is amazing. It's it's so easy to visually see the
Yeah,
devastation to your house and what you
right.
were barely left with.
I know.
But you talked about, some of the groups that have helped you. So that's a perfect opportunity. So I thank you to go over to Hilda with United Way of South County to talk a little bit from her perspective of how she and her team were able to help you once they came in. So thank you. And now Hilda.
Hi, everyone. I'm Hilda Dutton. I am the um, Director of Disaster Recovery and Resiliency with United Way in South Sarasota County. And like Vicki said, we became involved with her. Gosh, it was probably about a year after the storm. So I think it was probably about this time last year. We partnered with the long-term recovery group of Sarasota County, partnered with World Renew, which is a storm recovery organization based out of Michigan. And they did a community assessment for Sarasota County. And Vicki had signed up for that several months previously. And so as we made our way through the list, we came to Vicki's name and we went out to her home and we met with her and realized that she was just living here and there, and her home was down to just the concrete floor, the studs, and the ceiling. She even had to have her underground pipes removed, the cast iron pipes. The house had shifted. So she didn't even have plumbing, no electricity. She had nothing. So we had to start basically from scratch. Her roof was good and her concrete floor was good. And Vicki was very resilient. I have to say that she hid her trauma really well. The most trauma that I saw from Vicki was this spring, soon after she moved into her home. And we, as you all know, we didn't have rain for a long time. And we had forecasted a huge rainstorm, and she kind of freaked out and she was so panicked because it was going to rain. And I think it was the first really big rain since she had been in her home and since all the work had started. And it was like, okay, it's okay. It's rain. Your house is good. We're going to get through it. And, it just brings into focus, it was the first time I had really experienced that with a survivor, how traumatic that can be. You think, okay, people are back in their homes now, they feel safe, but that's a lifetime of trauma every time it rains. And now I realize, seeing Vicki's yard, because the ditches still aren't fixed in front of Vicki's house. Every time it rains, her yard is flooding. And with Debbie, the deep puddles were just about a foot or two from getting into her house again. And so I felt like I was traumatized driving by her house to see this again, thinking, please, please, please stop raining, stop flooding, we can't do this again. And I don't even live there. So but just speaking of the trauma, very few of our clients don't have trauma of some sort. We've probably, with the long-term recovery group, we've we've repaired and completed, I think 44 houses as of last week, and those are in various stages. Some of those were minor repairs, some of those were major repairs. it- Vicky's house was a major repair, but we've done others just as severe as Vicky's. Some of the houses that we've done that have been major repairs even had to have the roofs in addition to the entire inside. So, and we have many more. We have the World Renew volunteers who are mostly made up of retired carpenter tradespeople from mostly the upper Midwest. They're coming back the second week in October, and they'll be here through April, like Vicki said, in 3-week stints. They're coming back, and we still have enough work to keep them busy all the way again. And this is just on Ian. It's amazing how long this recovery period takes. People in our county think, Ian was 2 years ago, we're recovered, they don't see it. It's not as obvious as it was, but there are still people who are living in FEMA trailers. I still have people calling every week who are just now settling with the insurance companies, and they're realizing they don't have nearly enough of a settlement to fix their houses. And it's too late now to go back and try to make up the difference with a FEMA claim, because FEMA shut down the Ian claims in March of this year. So they can no longer go and ask for FEMA money to supplement their insurance, because, you can't file for FEMA when you have an open insurance claim. It's getting harder and harder to help people. I mean, this isn't a pitch for fundraising, but the funders are running out of money. Like Red Cross funds are gone now. It's just harder. We're leaning more on the community now for to help our residents recover. But we met a family last week that live in South Venice, or Inglewood, actually, I guess. And, they just settled with the insurance company. They're living in a FEMA trailer, and their house is no electricity, no windows. All their windows blew out, no AC. Their home is just a shell as well. And FEMA has given them a couple of extensions on their FEMA trailer, but FEMA wants to take those mobile homes back. They don't want to leave those forever. And so now they have the fear of what's going to happen if FEMA doesn't give us an extension and our home isn't fixed. And because they don't have enough insurance money by far to fix that home. And FEMA's telling them there's no guarantee that you're going to get another extension. And so they're thinking, what are we going to do with our 3 kids? Are we going to live in a tent in the yard? So, the trauma continues. It's really hard to tell people, okay, we're going to help you. We can do it. We're going to help you as much as we can. And we'll do it as fast as we can, but still we can't move people ahead of others that have been on the list. It's just a balancing act. And, we constantly are trying to prioritize and fit people in where we can. And there's a lot of work left to be done in our county. Lots of work left. The insurance companies, Vicki mentioned loopholes. And United Policyholders can speak on this. Julitza can speak so much more. I think the insurance companies, I think they traumatize people so much. Yeah, it's it's unreal some of the things that some of our survivors have talked about with their insurance companies. It's, it's unreal to me, some of the things that I have heard over the last couple of years doing this. It's, it's definitely been an education doing this job. I mean, it's a very rewarding field to be in, and I enjoy going to work every day. It's, I've met so many wonderful people. It's, and I love doing the work and seeing the progress that we're making. But it's definitely a balancing act. And one thing that I cannot stress enough with people is have your hurricane kits ready. Have all of your valuable papers, irreplaceable papers in one spot. And I tell all of the clients that I work with, or I ask them all the time, do you have your hurricane kit ready? Where are all of your papers? And even the people that have been through Ian, most of them will tell me, no, I've been thinking about that. And it's like, even if you don't have like food and candles and all that sort of thing, at least have your irreplaceable papers ready. And, I cannot stress that enough to have your paperwork ready. There's so many things that are just so hard to replace.
Right.
But we are still taking referrals at United Way. We're the lead agency for the long-term recovery group for Sarasota County. And the long-term recovery group is made up of different nonprofits, businesses, churches, local government agencies. And we just come together just to, form a group to do what we can to help with the recovery effort. But United Way is the lead agency, and I put my phone number with my extension and my email in the chat. So if you know of anyone who is having any Hurricane Ian issues, they can reach out to me, and I can either get them on our list, we can come out and do an assessment, or I can just help them find the resources that they need. So, if they don't reach me, just have them give me a call.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Hilda. Just to, one thing in our chat, it's really, thank you both for sharing your stories. And it's really eye-opening. We don't realize how long it takes to recover, how difficult it is. And, the physical time it takes to recover is even surpassed by the emotional, and mental health time that it takes. And to listen to how easily, and you really bring that up, Hilda, and based on what Vicki said before, how just the rain, another big storm is coming, triggers people, and their trauma comes back. And it comes back, and that's probably a long time, and we each have to learn different ways of dealing with that and controlling that anxiety as it comes back over and over again when it starts to rain or other kinds of things. But thank you so much, both of you, and you talked a lot about the insurance companies. I think you both have some of the challenges, some of the loopholes, the challenges of really trying to rebuild. And Julissa, who's going to speak next, is really our expert on that. And I hope you can share some tips with everybody for what to do.
Hello, everyone. I'm Julissa Perez. I am United Policyholders Florida liaison. I am an attorney, but through United Policyholders, we do not offer legal representation, but we help policyholders to speak up and to navigate through their insurance claim process. I'll give you a little bit more of my background. So I began working with insurance in 2017. It was September of 2017 when my career was defined by 2 hurricanes. So I was working for a foreclosure law firm, And when Hurricane Irma hit Florida, FEMA put a stop for at least 90 days on all foreclosures, and the law firm laid off almost the entire staff. So a few weeks later, I am from Puerto Rico. My entire family works in Puerto Rico. As you know, a week later after Hurricane Irma, Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico. It was then when I was contacted by another law firm that worked with insurance policies, with insurance claims, defending, right, policyholders. And I started working with them to help with Hurricane Maria claims in Puerto Rico, but based from Tampa. Since then, I've been working with policyholders, and I hope to continue to. It's an amazing path to help and see people recover. Is not easy, as you heard. First of all, policies are contracts, and unfortunately, many people can 20 years can pass by, you're with the same policy insurance company, and you don't even know the name because your mortgage just, shows it for you, and you never had to make a claim, and then you get hit by a hurricane, and now you're like, what do I do now? And people don't know what to do, don't even know where to contact their insurance company. And that's where we have the resources. You can visit our webpage, United Policyholders, and we have sample letters and ways to show you how to communicate, how to contact your insurance company, and how to make your claims, first of all. Because like Vicki mentioned, she at first, when someone maybe asked her what happened to your property, she would say, well, my property flooded. But then as time passed by, she found mold. She found so many other damages that many times are not visible, that you as your property owner, you don't have the expertise to know what is actually damaged, what is the level of the damage. The other thing is, she said that she first saw the damages at the same time with her adjuster. That's be careful always with that. Many times adjusters can feel that they're nice and they're friendly, and you think they're trying to help you, but they're not your friends. This is a negotiation. You're negotiating your rights, and they're negotiating the money of their company. So you have to always remember you have rights. You've been paying for this policy, you've been paying for this coverage. You have so many questions, and they have to answer it, or we are available to answer them for you. You have so many stress and frustration, and then you are required to give so much information when you are in the middle of, how to even decide what to do first, what is your priority to in your recovery process. So it's always important that you take pictures, that you ask for the current policy copy, the entire copy, because you will always have what we call the deck page, that is that consists of, let's say, 3 to 5 pages of your policy, but that does not include all the information such as exclusions and limitations. For example, you might have contents coverage, but maybe there's a cap limit to that. You can only ask for up to, let's say, $10,000. And of course, maybe that's not enough for all your contents. Many people say, how am I gonna sit down and fill up this inventory page when I can remember everything I had in my closet, everything I had in each room? And there's where we go in and we say, look for pictures. Maybe you have pictures from your daughter's prom night, or a birthday, or a get together, where you can see the conditions that was your house, where you can see what you had in those rooms. You don't have to look for specific pictures, because of course, it's not common. You're not going to be taking pictures of your closet, every day, but maybe you can see it through another type of event picture. Other things is you can go through these big department stores, and they have these lists for like wedding registries. So you can go there and look up items and see items that you had, and take notes and see their prices. You don't have to go through, going physically to the places. You can do all this online. Other things is mitigation, and that is very important. Yes, you're expecting help, right? You need help, but like Vicki explained, it takes time. It takes time for you to contact your policy company, your insurance company. It takes time for them to respond, to get someone there. So in the meantime, yes, like Vicki explained, she went to one of these stores. She got the fans and things, the humidifiers to help, you know, mitigate these damages, because you don't want it to get worse. And you as a policyholder also have responsibilities and duties. You also have to cooperate with your insurance company. You have to protect your property. You have to provide them the information. Right now, we're in the stage of many people are trying to appeal their insurance, are trying to supplement. And when I speak with them and I ask them, do you have additional estimates, additional receipts, proof, to let know the insurance company that they owe you more money under your policy limits? And they say yes. And then my next question is, have you provided them? And many times they say no. And I go to them, well, that's the first step. You can't, they're not gonna come to you, they're not gonna call you or send you an email and say, hey, do I owe you more money? No, you have to provide information. You have to tell them, here, this is the estimate. You have underestimated my damages. We are all facing inflation. The cost of materials, the cost of labor is much higher than it was before. So, but you need proof. You are your best advocate. So if you don't do your homework, you can expect them to pay you the money they owe you, unfortunately. Even though I have spoken with many policyholders and I tell them, yes, I agree with you. You have the right. Yes, you're right. They owe you that money. You're right. You have all those damages, but there is a protocol. There is a process you have to complete. If you want them to consider your property a total loss or to pay you more, you have to prove them that you need that amount of money, that that's the amount that you are owed on your policy. Vicki mentioned something important. She got help from her neighbors. Her circumstances were different. She was the only house that was flooded, but in other circumstances, other cases, it's a whole community. So you can speak with your neighbors to see how, if they got paid and what did they do? Who did they hire? What help did they get? What worked for them? What did not work for them? And that way you get ideas and tips on what to do. Many times in communities, you share the same insurance company, so they can tell you, hey, this is the number where you can call and they'll, you know, answer quickly. Other things is mold. She mentioned her mold was only visible after walls were taken out. That is correct. Many times mold is not visible. You cannot smell it. So it is important that if you did get a lot of water damage, you do get a mold inspection to your property, just to make sure, because not only for your insurance claim, but for your health. Mold is very dangerous. And I have met many policyholders that have also had a lot of health issues due to this, to the molds. I will soon let Annie speak so she can share her experience with her claim in her neighborhood, how they all got together and how they were able to recover because they were together. They helped each other and share their experiences. So
Right.
you have my email. I'm offering office hours in different communities. We will be into the end of the year offering office hours. You can also contact me through phone calls or Zoom meetings, and I'm here to help you navigate your policy and your insurance claim, help you with your appeal or any supplemental claims you have.
Well,
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Julissa. And thank you for leading right into Annie, our last presenter before we open it up to questions. So Annie, please take it away.
You. So, as it was introduced earlier, we did lose 1,440 homes just in my community to a wildfire. We lived in a subdivision. It wasn't in the wooey, it wasn't in an area that quote unquote had all the high risks. As community members, we got together and we formed a group to help our neighbors get back home. And that was quite impactful. It was very successful, but in hindsight, it was successful because we lived in a flat community. We were highly mortgaged, which meant that we had insurance. It was before insurance was, people were grossly underinsured. We were somewhat underinsured, but not to the point where we couldn't take some of our contents and bridge that gap. With all the work I've done since then, I can see where the challenges become greater. But what I really would like to discuss today is what I've seen in my community and in other communities moving forward. And that's the emotional and the physical toll that these take on you. We had a community that was very connected. We got together once a week and we had quote unquote Wine Wednesday, where we got together and WHINED together, generally with a glass of wine. But, you know, just being able to share what worked, as Jalitza was saying, what worked, what didn't work, and how do you move forward? That also was our therapy in many ways. I have read that you need to tell your story 36 times before you start to heal. Before you start to heal. Nobody wants to listen to that 36 times. There are examples of people in my neighborhood, in my community, where a retired police sergeant, the night of the fire, he lost his entire memory. Why? Because his cup of trauma inside of him overflowed. And so he had to work at getting some of those other traumas, dealing with them, to bring the cup back into itself. And we had 3 men on my block. And you will see that I am focusing a lot on men. And the reason is because women are better at talking, I think. 3 men on my block in their early 50s who had heart surgery in the 3rd year of recovery. Gentleman across the street from me walked into his house. We all think that the minute you get home, everything clears up. And it's just not true. It now gives you time to actually deal with all those feelings and anxiety and all that stuff you've been bottling up because you're running frantically to keep up, to get things resolved, right? You may be protecting your children. You may be protecting your spouse in whatever way you can. He wasn't able to work for 1.5 years. He had intense therapy. This is not uncommon. Every long-term recovery group that I sit on, and I sit on all of them, they express this. I try to explain this to them. And after 6 months, I hear things like, gosh, our community's still struggling. Absolutely. This trauma is very real. It needs to be recognized so that people get help early and know how to deal with it. So that is my biggest thing that I really would like to express to everybody here. You have gone through a trauma. You need to support each other. You need to utilize every resource that you have available to you. Getting back home is not the fix-all that we would like to think it is. And, you know, we were inundated with, because our fire was in 2017 and it was so massive. And basically our entire neighborhood looked like bombs had gone off. It was decimated. We had reporters in our face all the time. And what their number one question was, what did you lose that was so impactful? And what they wanted to hear and what they would kind of put in your mouth was, oh, I lost the baby pictures, or I lost grandma's wedding ring. What we lost, and this pertains to all survivors, you lost your sense of safety. You lost being able to go into your home and shut the door, sit in your favorite chair with all that crap that you have in your house around you, that whether you like it or not, it's yours. And there's a certain comfort that comes from that. And I think that as more people recognize what it is that you lose in these situations, it gives them a better starting off point in healing. And so much of that is my silver linings is, yes, I get to work for UP now and I get to help people. And that's huge for me. I also have people in my community that I grew very close with. And if we have a fire warning, we are all over texting each other, supporting each other, telling each other what's going on. And that's where the community steps up and helps each other. And that's a huge part of what builds community. And if there is another silver lining that people can get out of this, and not everybody can, it's that once you're back home, you can depend on those people around you. Those people are your people. 1,440 homes in Coffey Park. We have a Christmas parade every year. And you can drive up and down the streets. We started with 20 cars. We're over 100 now. You can drive up and down the streets and you will see people with pop-up tents, barbecues, waiting for the parade. Hundreds and hundreds of people. We had a party in Saturday in the park 2 weekends ago with 4 bands. I don't know what percentage of the community showed up, but that takes you back to support, connection, all of those things that you have to get something good out of something bad. And so those are the kind of things that we count our blessings for. These disasters are not going away. We have to learn how to live with them. But I think that even more, it was extremely important for me to rebuild my house. I'd worked damn hard to keep it. I'd had a sick husband for years, a son, worked 2 jobs. I was angry. I was going to get my house back. But what I realized after getting my house back was what I needed to get is myself back. And the sooner we recognize that, the sooner we can come to grips. At the end of the day, you're going to have broken relationships and depression and children with nightmares and anxiety. How do we handle that? A group like this where you guys can talk together is huge. I'm not saying conventional therapy isn't good, because it is, but these kind of sessions, getting together with your neighbors, bringing lawn chairs out on a Friday afternoon with a cheese platter and crackers, and that's healing.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Annie. That's thank you for sharing your story with us, your resilience, and really talking about the whole importance of feeling safe, and also taking care of yourself, recognizing your own feelings. Beyond rebuilding, it's when do you begin to recognize yourself and your emotions. And thank you so much for talking about that. I mean, it can. And there's no one normal single time that for everybody. It could take months, 6 months, a year, around the anniversary of a disaster, or oftentimes when people will begin to, turn to their emotions and begin to give themselves the luxury of thinking about, how am I feeling? Because for the whole beginning, you're trying to rebuild and you're dealing with concrete things. And then you suddenly get to the point and say, wait, what about me? So thank you. You really were very, eloquent in explaining that and sharing those feelings with us. And we're going to go into our conversation now. And before that, I know Annalise wants to share some resources with you that we've put together. So before we start conversation, here are some resources that we put up.
Yeah, so in addition to, the wonderful speakers that we had tonight, we're going to send out these resources along with the recording of tonight's event. So it's got some additional stuff, including what we did discuss tonight. We have our state emergency response team. We also have our community emergency response team. Florida Department of Children and Families has a first responder support line and family support line. And then, of course, our local disaster resource center, which is open now through Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And I actually think we have somebody on the call with us, Stephanie, who has been operating the DRC, and she might be able to answer any questions that anyone may have about the resources that are available there. And Stephanie, are you with us? I think I see her here.
Yes. Hi.
Hey.
Yeah, and just to clarify, so I work for Sarasota County government. I am the volunteer program coordinator for the county, and then during a disaster, I work out of the Emergency Operations Center, and I coordinate all of the volunteer and donations efforts. So I'm the unit lead in the county for all disasters here in Sarasota. So for why my camera was off is for this coming potential impact. We are gearing up to be activated at the Emergency Operations Center again in preparation, just in case. And so I know Andy had thought it would be a good idea to kind of come on and let you guys know just from the county side of things that there are a lot of operations and moving parts in place for your safety. There have already been meetings and are typically prior to an emergency management team, local officials, emergency responders, all of your county departments and leaders, all prepping and having those discussions of, do sandbag operations need to be opened? Do evacuation centers need to be opened? What are the communications that need to go out to all of the residents? Things like that. And then like in our particular county staff are required to serve in an emergency role so we can get activated into those roles, whether it's working a shelter, working at the Emergency Operations Center, things like that. So in my particular role, I work very closely with people like Hilda and Michelle and those from United Policyholders. We have a local COAD group, which is Community Organizations Active in Disaster, and then our long-term recovery group. Both are led by United Way of South Sarasota County right now. And I'm basically that county liaison to those organizations to help advocate for them for what they need, and to also share what it is that they're doing and help kind of a larger view coordinated response between all of our voluntary agencies and the county.
I'm gonna turn this down. I tried to explain the
Oh, sorry, someone was talking. So our disaster recovery center has been open, and there are resources available there. We had a lot of local partners that were there as well. Right now it is FEMA and our and SBA, the Small Business Administration. And then we will have World Renew doing their community assessments out of that same location as well. Just so everyone's aware, if you do live in Sarasota, that resource center is going to be closed with the impending storm until the storm has passed and they can assess reopening. So just a minor adjustment with the schedule this week. So those communications will be going out, but that's essentially what I do. And I thought it'd be helpful for people to know that there is a much larger coordinated effort, not only on the county side, but also state and federal. We're working with all of the municipalities in the area, as well as we have a lot of state support. There is a state version of what we do locally with the voluntary agencies. There's a group at the state level that supports us as well and sends teams in to help do that muck and gut that you guys were talking about of houses and tarping and cutting down trees and eventually the rebuilds and things like that.
Mhm. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie. That was really very helpful information. We are a very lucky community in that we do have organizations like COAD and United Way, South Sarasota, and local government and state government who all mobilize and come together, during disasters, and we are lucky. So thank you for all of those resources. There's also we didn't put up a national distress helpline where people can call 24/7 to speak for free to a trained counselor, about after a disaster, and that's another number we can add. And so now it's time to open it up for people with questions. We have had some statements in the chat as we've gone along, people talking about how wonderful it is to be able to share, to get support, turn to neighbors in your communities for support. And we know how much that really can help people get through these stressful and traumatic events. So why don't we open it up? Anybody want to raise their hand, shout out a question for one of our panelists? Nobody? It's quiet.
So since we have crickets,
Cricket.
cricket, I'm going to share some tips while you guys think of what you'd like to say. Please put.
It actually looks like someone just raised their hand there, Juliana Day.
Yes,
You're more than welcome to unmute yourself and just ask your question. We have an intimate enough group here.
Thank you.
Okay, my question is this. With all the disasters that went on, how are the healing processes happening for the peoples who relocated in the different areas? Do we have any statistics on whether they're offered the mental health problem, or how was the trauma addressed for relocation people?
Unfortunately, we don't have those statistics. And as we have expressly more wildfires in rural areas where people do not have insurance and they get dispersed amongst different states, different areas, it does become more challenging. Absolutely. And it's something that I feel is something that has only really been addressed in maybe the last 5 years. So we're a long way off from supplying people with what they need. And yeah, people having to relocate is a huge detriment to them being able to utilize their community to heal.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Also, one more. One thing you hit on, Anna, was my key thing when I was taking notes was safety. And I think that's a big part that plays trauma in people and impacts them, because the event that happened in their life, that they lose that sense of safety.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what, we have to give them some kind of reassurance of that, like we talk about the hope, we give them hope. So that was my next clue.
Yes.
Absolutely. And some of that is just internal, right? It's how you're wired. It's what your triggers are. I mean, you guys are all being triggered, whether you were impacted like Vicki by the last one, or whether you weren't, but you experienced it and you saw the devastation. That can trigger all of you.
Right. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Annie. And I think it's also important to note that sometimes when the emotional stress does affect your mental health over a period of time, it's okay to ask for help. And when people do relocate, they often go turn to their local mental health systems and local mental health resources to get treatment, support, some ongoing care that they may need. So it's real. These, the emotional aftermath is very real. It often will pass. It usually does over time, even though you're re-triggered and people learn different mechanisms to coping with that. But it's okay to ask for help, because for some people, it lasts longer. It can affect you more deeply. And that includes children as well, who may not be able to express. We didn't really talk about that, but the impact of disaster on youth who may not verbally be able to express their emotions as much as, or as well, or as freely as an adult, but you'll see it in school, you'll see it with friends, so it's important for individuals and for families to, take care of each other, be vigilant, and not be afraid to ask for help. So I just wanted to add that from my perspective. Are there other questions? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
That's
no, it looks like Stephanie has her hand raised there.
I'd like to address
Yeah.
that really quickly, what we saw in my community. We saw that with the younger kids, it was easier to recognize because they would revert to bedwetting or nightmares.
Mm.
What was really a struggle was teenagers who were watching their families go through a lot and not wanting to put any more burden on them. And they would end up with drug problems, alcohol problems, massive panic attacks. So that's a huge connector for people with the teenagers, because, the little kids just tend to be a little bit more obvious.
Okay,
Sorry.
thank you. Thank you, Annie. Thank you. Stephanie, your hand is up.
Yeah. So just something I wanted to share is, for me with Debbie, right, we were activated for 3 weeks. And I think within the first 2 weeks, I only had 2 days off. So it was very, very stressful. And, my boss was telling me that, the Mac train is coming. It's going to hit you at some point, and you just need to be prepared for it. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'll deal with it when it comes. And it was interesting, showing up to work, all of that, I was fine. But it wasn't until I got to church, and it's 2 weeks in, and I was in my safe space, where with people I felt comfortable with, in an environment that I knew was like literally meant for healing, that I just broke down. It was ugly crying. I won't even lie. And, I just had to have that moment and talk with people that I felt safe around, and be able to refocus and then pick myself back up so that I could go back the next week and, or the next day and, do what I needed to do. But, as you guys were talking about safety, I thought about it from that aspect of, who are your safe people? Where's your safe environment? And for me, faith just happened to be the thing that supported me.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Stephanie. I mean, and I think we've heard a little bit about that from Hilda, Annie. Who helps the helpers? Because they hear so much. About from other people about the trauma that they're experiencing. The impact on helpers is enormous. And we haven't really addressed that. We could do a whole workshop about that, vicarious trauma and the impact on helpers, and who helps the helpers, and how important it is for helpers to be able to get the support and be able to have the kind of conversation with people they feel safe with, the same kind of conversation you had, Stephanie. It is really an important area. So thank you for bringing that up. Other questions, please?
Looks like we have one in the chat here. It says, do any of the panelists have suggestions about how and when to make emotional support available? Many people are consumed with the practical aspects of insurance, rebuilding, etc., and may not prioritize psychological support.
I think the earlier, the better.
Better. Yep.
I think that being able to recognize that if you say there's therapy available is not nearly as appealing to people at that stage as let's get together and talk. Let's get share. Because quite frankly, I know as a survivor myself, I could see the trauma in other people, but I couldn't see it in me. It takes a little bit for that to recognize that, in my opinion.
Yeah. And just to add, after 9/11, in some ways, we saw a window open of people who were, for the first time, were okay, because the message was it's okay to not be okay. So that having difficulty sleeping, having loss of appetite, there are lots of different ways that exposure to these kinds of traumas can affect us. And seeking help as soon as possible earlier on, and not saying, oh, it'll go away, or other people saying, oh, don't worry, toughen up, be tough, you can get through it. That's really not a great answer. I mean, the great answer is to try to encourage somebody, support them, try to encourage them to seek help when they're ready. But it's really important to do that. Any other?
Giselle,
Yes.
I think Vicki is trying to respond to
Oh.
that, but Vicki, you're on mute.
There we go.
Thank you.
There
Thank
you go.
you.
No,
Thank
I
you,
wanted
Andrew.
to add to that. I think, it's really important to, because you don't recognize the trauma in yourself, definitely, and to reach out to friends. I had a huge neighbor community that came, from my disaster. I have to say, like, amazing things come out of bad, like, things that were mentioned earlier. But, in all kind of traumas, we don't have self-care. People put themselves last. They always look out for everybody else first and take care of everybody else. They don't actually think about themselves because they think they're being selfish by taking care of themselves. But actually, if you don't, do self-care, like on the airplane, they always tell you, put your mask on before you help the child. You have to help yourself so you can then be strong and reach out and help other people. So I think self-care, getting yourself back in a routine as soon as possible, exercise, eat well, try and sleep well, it's easier said than done. But if you really focus on it, I think, if you really apply self-care to yourself, then you can get yourself over the hump, and then you can help others as well. It really helped me a lot doing that, and having friends to talk to and such. It was very good. So,
Great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Vicki. Other hands, questions, comments, reactions that people have?
I'll
That you'd
also
like to
add that, we have Helen Neal, who is our trauma healing specialist, who actually organized a healing group, like Annie was talking about, a safe space to just get together, not necessarily like a therapy session or anything like that. And she's been doing that down in Inglewood. So we are always open. If anyone tuning in or anyone tuning in knows anyone that would be interested in a support group for survivors of natural disasters, you can feel free to email us at sarasotastrong at gmail.com. I'll put it in the email. And we are happy to facilitate at no cost a healing workshop for you and members of your community, or if it's a congregation, a neighborhood, just let us know.
Thank you. Thank you, Annalise. That's a really important announcement. And thank you for bringing up Helen and the terrific work that she's doing in the community. Anything else? Is Andy with us? I don't know if Andy has any announcement she'd like to make.
I
Or
have
she's
one
on mute.
question.
Yes, please.
With Sarasota Strong, with Helen,
Helen, yes.
this disaster workshop that you're offering, or is there any other type of workshops?
Yeah, so
in the
Helen,
field that's got to do with
Helen offers a variety of workshops, and we do tailor them depending on the needs of the community or the people that are asking for her services. So yeah,
Okay.
we absolutely offer a variety of workshops tailored to your needs.
And how do we just contact you all at Sarasota Strong?
Yep, and just tell us any interest that you have, and we'll put you in touch with Helen and see if we can get you in group with or in touch with a group that's already coordinated. And if it's not, then we can see how to make that happen for you.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
Of course.
Or put you in touch with other organizations in the community who might be doing similar support groups or on different topics.
Absolutely.
There are a few other organizations that we work with, and we share information and cross-refer to each other, to be able to give people as many options and resources as they need.
Mm-hmm.
So just email us. That's a terrific question. Any other questions? Any other topics that you may think of? These community conversations are for the people in our community, you know, living throughout Sarasota, Manatee counties, and the way you can help us help our community learn to care for itself is by giving us topics that you think would be of interest, to get out there and have this kind of open dialogue and community conversation about. So please, in the email address that Annalise is putting up, I think she's putting up in the chat, not only email us questions that may come to your mind about resources or groups, but also about additional topics for community conversations, whether it's a follow-up to something you've heard tonight or other issues that you think our community should talk about. So, you know, please, we can only be as strong as all of you kind of contribute and make us. So please give us topics and ideas. Anything else? Annalise, anybody? We have a few minutes.
Yeah. Let me
6
check.
minutes left. No. If anybody would like to raise anything or suggest anything or make a comment.
I just suggest a topic on family disparity to address that.
Okay. And disparity, you're talking about economic,
Economic,
everything.
food, it's a whole gamut.
The whole gamut. Okay.
Yeah.
The whole gamut of disparities we know that are out there. Okay.
Especially with families
Gotcha.
going through, and especially with our I'm looking at a lot of young families just developing up, and they're going into the era that they're into now, how to make ends meet. And that's a lot of trauma, you know, and we see a lot of families that are, you know, not making it because of
Right.
that they're going through.
Right. Thank you. That's a great topic for us.
I would like to say something else.
Yes, Julie.
Yes, I would like to congratulate Vicki because she's such a good model for policyholders because she didn't give up and she searched for all the help. She asked for all the help because for many people that's the hardest step, to ask for help. And she did that and she did not give up no matter how long it took. And that's very important because many people do give up. They're not willing to give the fight, and the insurance companies take advantage of that. They make it hard enough to see how much you are willing to fight, how much you are willing to really, work for to get what you need and what you are covered for. So don't give up. I know there's so much happening. It's so difficult to prioritize, but don't give up on you. Don't give up on your property. Don't give up on your family. That's very important to remember. Just wanted
Yeah.
to add.
Yeah, that's right.
And just
You're
want
a
to add
role
on,
model.
just want to add on to that as well. When you said like for insurance, don't give up, with FEMA, don't give up. FEMA has literally changed their language. They just did that this year. So it doesn't say denied, it just says not approved. But typically that email, if you scroll down, now says next steps as to what they need from you. And so you can appeal that, and you're encouraged to appeal that. So anyone you talk with, just remind them, like, it's never like a done deal per se with FEMA. Like, stay in their queue, keep being persistent, because a lot of times it will literally pay off.
It is. And if I don't know, am I on mute? I'm sorry.
No, we can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, I was
You're
gonna
good.
say actually what you're saying there, Stephanie, is I appealed at least, I think I did 4 or 5 appeals. And you have to, whether it's in the end for housing, or there's so many different increments and different ways you can appeal, and they'll ask for photos. And so that's why really, like when you were saying about taking photos, I really the list, like I was going to conclude, is take pictures, document everything, keep a checklist, keep records, get your immediate needs versus your long-term needs, stay informed, be patient, the whole thing, and celebrate small victories. because it takes a long time to get to where you need to be. So if something little happens, celebrate it, and just be patient because you'll get there in the end.
Thank you, Vicki. You're our role model, a role
Oh.
model for resilience. Anybody could stay on the phone 17 plus hours to get through to FEMA is resilient. And and not to joke, you really are our role model. And Annie, hearing what you went through and it came out and now you're helping other people. And Hilda, how you devoted your career now to help people like Vicki. And
Oh,
that's
yeah,
how
it was
we got to
amazing, by the
Vicki
way.
was through Hilda and how I got to Hilda. We're a community and I really, it's just a great opportunity for me to thank you all for joining us and to thank our presenters. Each one of you, really, you're each an inspiration, and together, wow, you really, it makes me feel that we can tackle almost anything that Mother Nature throws our way, right? So, and going into that this week, at the end of this week, with a hopeful outlook, that we'll be able to tackle whatever bad weather comes our way this weekend. I think we're better prepared now with all of the tips that you've given us to be prepared. I think being prepared was a very important message that I hope everybody heard. So, Annalise, is there anything you want me to say or you would like to say at this point?
Nope, I think that's it. Other than we do have a special guest joining us. We have our new executive director, Tom Edwards. We'll just give a shout out to him joining the SRQ Strong team. We're really excited to see what the future holds with him behind us. So I'll say that, and then yeah, Tom, do you want to say something real quick before we get out of here?
Right.
Listen, it's an honor for me to have been asked to join this amazing team. And just listening to the stories tonight from Vicki on through to Annie, of watching how the horrible happens and resiliency happens, and Annie's growth and her ability to share and work with others. Also, a shout out to Giselle. You did an amazing job moderating tonight. Thank you so much for keeping us all glued together and focused in on the topic. Well done, Giselle.
Thank you.
Yes,
And I thank Annalise because she kept me going. So let's
yes,
not
and before everyone logs off here real quick, we're just gonna launch a quick poll. We love to have everyone's feedback on our community conversations on whether you learned something new. If you learned something new, let us know what it was. And then if you're gonna do anything differently as a result of attending this conversation, if you're gonna try to figure out how to get involved, maybe at one of the resource centers or something along those lines. We love to get feedback on what you got out of these conversations. So if you'll take the time to just fill that in, and then we can log off once you've done that. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for our panelists. Thank you, Giselle, so much for being an amazing
Thank you.
moderator.
Well,
Appreciate it.
thank
Thank
you,
you
everybody,
for my tech help.
joining
I
us.
appreciate you guys as well.
Thank you. Thank you all. Have a
Thank
great night and stay safe. Most importantly. Thank you.
Thank you for those of you who are filling in the poll. I'll give just another minute here, and then we'll go ahead and end. All right. Thank you guys. Have a great evening.